everyone. Welcome to the Play to Your Best Summit. It's a series of incredible humans coming together in mindset, nutrition, training, recovery, so we can all thrive, really, is what we want to do. We want to have vitality. We want to just get out there and be our absolute best in sport and in life. And we have the incredible Andrea Donsky. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So nice to see you.
So fantastic to have you. I really thank you for saying it. Yes. And coming into this space because we have an incredible interview about to happen. So let me just tell everybody just a little bit about you before we dive in. So Andrea comes as, like, you have been in the space of wellness for a really long time.
Really long time.
Really long time. No, but you have now transitioned, as we go through these perimenopause, and now you are post-menopause. And you have really come into this space of becoming a menopause educator. You love speaking about it. You want to get rid of stigma on it. You are now, you are the founder of several and a partner in several companies, but with a lot of passion and energy going right now to We Are Morphus or morphus.com. That's how to find it, everybody. And can you share just a little bit about this incredible company that you have is rising up in who you be?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for having me. Yeah, so I have been in the health and wellness industry for 22 plus years, and I have written books on how to understand what we're eating and reading, and when it comes to our labels. And about, I'd say 5 years ago, I'll take it back for a second. So I started my first company, which is in 2000. And then in 2007, I started Naturally Savvy, which has been really my roadmap for how to make healthier choices when I was having children. And then when my partner and I was in my late 40s, I started experiencing menopausal symptoms. I was like, you know what? Her name is Randy. I was like, we should really pivot and start talking about menopause more. Cause I didn't really, I was feeling all these feelings, but I didn't have the answers. And I was like, wait a minute, this is my job. It's my job to understand my body. It's my job to understand what I'm putting in and on it. But I didn't have the first clue as to what was happening. So I thought, well, if I don't really know, maybe others don't either. And that's what led me down this rabbit hole of really doing a ton of research on myself and reading, the scientific literature, as well as anecdotal research by speaking to a lot of different people. And that's when we decided to start our company. It's called Morphus. So metamorphosis us as a community. So morph us as a community. And like you said, the website is wearemorphus.com. And we are an educational platform. So we talk a lot about what's happening to your body at this time. We can talk about the symptoms if you want to get into those. And then we also do research, which I absolutely love. And we're going to launch a line of supplements. So I am so excited.
It's truly phenomenal. And coming from, there's so much and extension, like how we are in different stages of our lives.
Yeah.
And the underpinning, and in preparation for this interview, you were mentioning, like, so much of your life has been talking about, like, you have books, your TV personality. I can keep on going about all the things that Andrea has done. Like, honestly, she's just really busy. But you underpinning of this is you were talking about how to unjunk food your life, sort of thing, like how to
unjunk your junk food,
unjunk your junk food, and how this has shifted, maintaining this, but how do we come into now this life stage and understanding how are we in menopause?
Yeah.
What I want to ask you is maybe share a little bit more about that journey. Like, it's super interesting. And I think it's helpful for people to understand how you are in the space. And it's like, what's happening to my body, and how complicated that can actually feel sometimes, because all of a sudden you were doing all the right things, right? Right? Like you're a holistic nutritionist, educator, thinker, living in the lifestyle, and from understanding environmental, issues that impact our bodies, and then something's changing. Tell us a little bit how that actually felt and how that went, and kind of like going, holy smokes, what do I do?
Yeah. So it's a great question, because I kind of felt like that, because so much of my 22 years, so this was, we're going back, let's say it was like 17 years by that, when I started getting into it, I'd been in it a long time. And I was like, yeah, every day, that's what I do. I've written the books and I talk about eating, making healthier choices. And wait a minute, I practice what I preach. But I was thrown for such a loop, because when I started experiencing, so first of all, I was in perimenopause for 5 years before I even knew I was in perimenopause. I had my third baby at 41. I went into perimenopause at 42. And then from 42 to 47, I just wasn't feeling good. I gained a ton of weight. I hadn't changed a thing I was doing. And I put on all this weight, and I would have headaches, and I would have pain all over my body. I wasn't sleeping well. And like, just the list goes on and on. A frozen shoulder, which we now recently just saw that there was research connecting it to perimenopause. So I had all these things going on, and I was like, what's happening? And I would ask questions. Another thing that happened a lot to me was I had a voracious appetite, and I'm like, but why am I so hungry all the time? I don't understand. And like, I would, at the time I was following a paleo diet. And again, like I said, I didn't change anything. But now, after I started doing the research, I didn't have a lot of answers from people around me. I started doing the research and realized, oh, that's why I was so hungry, because ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, is highest in perimenopause, higher than it is before, higher than it is after. So there were all these things going on with my body that I came to understand after I had my first hot flash at 47. And then, oh, I thought, well, wait a second, maybe how I'm feeling and how I've been feeling for the last 5 years is actually because of menopause. I didn't even have the vocabulary to understand the difference between perimenopause and menopause. So that's how I came into this really not knowing very much. So I started doing the research and started understanding perimenopause, menopause, post-menopause. What are the different phases? What happens to us? What are the symptoms? And when I was talking to this woman, she was creating an app in this space. This was earlier on. And I had said to her, oh, I'm really interested in this whole menopause thing, because, I'm just starting to learn about it.
Right.
And she's like, oh yeah, there's like 30 symptoms or so, there's so many. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so many. And the way my brain works is I'm such an avid researcher. I love data. I was like, oh, let me start tracking the symptoms. And then I would start speaking to people, and then I would start looking at the literature, and I was like, wait a minute, there are way more than 30 symptoms. And now I've been tracking it for 5 years. We coined the term, there are 85 plus signs and symptoms of menopause, but there are like close to 100. Like, there are so many, and many that are common that we associate it with this time in our life, but many that were like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that that's connected.
Do you think, or do you find that, like, we also are living in a world that has a lot more stress, and we have a lot more other things that are going on, and it's, we think about processed foods or, ultra processed foods, and sometimes these symptoms of perimenopause and even after, and I think that that's an important point that I, want to have you touch on as well. Like, even in the beyond, it's not like symptoms are gone. It's not like it's all over, everything's perfect now. Although I do think that or what I hear is an incredible freedom. And it's like I don't give a shit so much anymore. Like, there's this, there's a release in the post-menopause, but we still, you still may be having certain symptoms. So my question is this: how do you know it's perimenopause or other things that are going on? Or does that even really matter in some cases? It's like a symptom is a symptom. Let's try to nourish our body.
Well, sure. There can be overlapping issues, right? Like, so one example could be hypothyroidism. So if somebody their thyroid is low, then a lot of those symptoms overlap. So one of the first things I always recommend is that we go to our doctor and get checked out. So there are blood tests. So let's say you're 35. So we know now perimenopause can start after the age of 35. So if you're 35 and up, go to your doctor, ask for certain blood tests, ask for your ferritin levels, ask for your thyroid, ask for your vitamin D, ask for your liver enzymes. Like, things start to shift and change as we go through this stage of our life. So there's different phases of our life, right? There's when, we go through puberty, then we go through, if you had a baby or you were pregnant, you go through pregnancy. And then there's the perimenopause, menopause phase. So there are those three phases where things start to change, our hormones are changing. So I always say, go to your doctor or healthcare provider, get checked out, make sure there's nothing underlying going on. Then once you know that you've got that clean bill of health, then you could start looking into, okay, well, maybe this is because I'm having heart palpitations, let's say, for example, maybe this is related to perimenopause. Do I have low levels of B1? Is my iron low, which is something you would have spoken to your healthcare provider about, right? Is it anxiety? Is it stress? So yes, there are so much overlap into what those symptoms are and this phase of life, or is it connected to aging, right? So it kind of like everything kind of intertwines. It all becomes synergistic at that point. So what I say is do your best to control what you can control and understand and be gentle with yourself with things that you can't control. So I'll give you an example. Many of us, as we get into this phase of life, gain a lot of weight. I was included in that. And we can be really hard on ourselves when we gain a lot of weight, right? We're like, wait, I don't understand. I'm being told that I should eat less, exercise more, which we know doesn't work for us in this phase of life anymore. We know what worked for us before perimenopause and menopause doesn't work for us afterwards. We have to rejig everything, including our mindset, but looking at our nutrition, our lifestyle, our supplements, like looking at all different things and including our mindset too. So we have to kind of change things, change the way we've been doing things, because for many of us, it just doesn't work anymore. So I always say what you can control, meaning the ability, if you can, like look at what you're eating, reading your labels, things like that. If there are things, and don't go crazy and overboard about it, because that could create anxiety for us, which again, we're more prone to, or it can be exacerbated in this stage of life. But just understanding that there are changes, understanding that we need to tweak certain things, and understanding that while our body is recalibrating during this perimenopause phase, is that we need to be gentle with ourselves. We need to be patient with ourselves. We need to show ourselves some extra grace, some extra love, because our body is changing and a lot of it isn't in our control.
Yeah. It's a curiosity. Be like, oh, there's something else going on. One of the, over 100 symptoms is, how can I support myself in this, rather than be like, oh, another thing. And
it gets really sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's very hard for many of us, especially if we're just cloudy. All we see are clouds and symptoms and we don't feel well. So it's important that we validate and we support many of us as we're going through this, but it does get better. When we get to that other side, like you were saying before, there are positives, but it's very hard to see them when we're in the weeds and we're not feeling good.
Yeah. So you mentioned, okay, so let's go into those things that we can actually control, or feel like we can do something about, because then we can take action and we feel like we're taking steps. So if you will, can you help us understand a little bit more about this idea of, let's talk about foods. Let's talk about whole foods and we're really busy lives, and our very busy lives. And how do I'm just going to throw it out into the general. How do you now come into this space of how do I nourish my body now, and why that might look different than before? And what are some of the key things that we need to look for in that?
Sure. So when it comes to what we're eating, it comes to our nutrition, one of the main things you want to focus on is protein. It's really important in this phase of our life that we get enough protein. And we may hear, oh, we get so much protein. A lot of us don't get enough protein. So you really want to aim for that 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. And that's important. Protein is important for waking up our brain. It's important for blood sugar regulation. It's important for our muscles. It's important for reducing cravings. It helps to reduce ghrelin, that hunger hormone, and it increases a hormone called peptide YY, which helps to satiate us and keep us full. So making sure that we get protein is key. Then we want to look at good quality fats like olive oil and coconut oil and avocado oil. You want to get enough fruits and veggies. So your veggies, you want to get a lot of greens. It's important for soluble fiber. We want to get that 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. Now, that's just a number. It's an arbitrary number that I know is put out there a lot, but it's important that we have some type of goal to work towards. So you really, you really want to make sure you're getting that 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. That helps to keep things moving, that you want to make sure you're going to the bathroom every day. It all plays into that. It helps to keep us full. And then you want to get your fruits, your lower glycemic fruits, like your berries or your sour apples is really important. And if you're going to eat complex carbohydrates, some women choose to, some women don't. If you're going to have, let's say, complex carbohydrates like your rice or any type of potato, go for a sweet potato, your squash, wild rice, quinoa, millet, things that are going to have vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, right? So they're going to have some type of nutrients that your body, they're going to have nutrients that your body needs at this time. You want to make sure you're hydrated. You want to make sure you drink half your weight in ounces. All of that is important. You also, now I know we're on nutrition, but I'm going to bring this into it. Lifestyle, managing stress is key. And I know for so many of us, it is really tough to do. And I get it. I'm there. I'm right there with all of you. But when you're eating in particular, if you're running and you're grabbing and you're on the go and you're stressed and, you're reading emails and it's upsetting you, it's going to impact your digestion. And our digestion changes as we get into this phase of life. Our motility goes down. We might have more gas and constipation and loose stools. We may not absorb our food as well. So all of it plays a role when it comes to what we're putting in our body. So taking a couple deep breaths before you eat. I remember learning this. This was like Nutrition 101 back in like 1999 when I went back to nutrition school. Relax when you're eating. Chew your food. Chewing, not only does it make it easier for us to digest, but also it stimulates the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic nervous system that helps us to relax. So it's a part of our nervous system. So there's just so much that goes into it when it comes to our nutrition that we might think it's just food, but it's not. There's so much more to it, right? Because everything that we do impacts how we're going to absorb our nutrients. Because if we're not absorbing, which we absorb less, we tend to absorb less in this phase of life, then we're going to feel the effects in so many different ways. So the key is really you want to maximize that as much as you can.
Absolutely. So help us. So let's go a little bit further. So now, okay, so we're now looking at and we're having rich variety, colorful, whole, like I'm thinking whole grains if you're going that way, or roots and fruits and vegetables, low glycemic. And what about, well, I'm like, what about when we don't have time? Like, what about when we want to grab something? And there's actually two angles that I want to go. You've mentioned particular fats, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that and what we are really thinking about, like, because I'm looking at labels. You're an expert on labels. You've written books about understanding labels. So I want to understand when I do need to grab something that's off the shelf, or that I'm even purchasing that looks like it's fresh.
Sure.
I know you've spoken about hummus before, right? So like, what is it that we're actually looking for when we're looking at fats, and something that might be helpful at this life stage? And then maybe extend out into what else do we need to noticing on a label that we're maybe never paid attention to before because we didn't have to as much.
So I'll answer the fats as part of what I'll make it a bigger answer, right? A broader answer.
Yeah.
So my research back in 2011 or 2010, when we started doing the research, was on understanding food labels. And the reason why was because we were at a party when my son was 4, he's 19 now. And he was at a party, and he really, I was very much the type of mom back then that was like, no. You're going to a birthday party. You're 2. I'm going to bring you peppers. You can't have cake. Like, I was literally that mom, right? Which I now look back and be like, yeah, that wasn't really, the way to go. But my first time having a child, I'm like, he's not going to eat junk food. And what I quickly learned is that we were at a party and my dad's like, let him eat junk food. He's a kid. That's what he's supposed to do. And then I thought, well, it's not, yes, the sugar, and we all hear about that. It's not great for our kids, but it wasn't so much about the sugar for me. It was about other ingredients in there that I knew. I was like, there's something else that's kind of bugging me here when he wanted to have it. And I soon came to realize that it was the artificial ingredients, like food coloring for kids. And we know that it's tied into behavioral issues, right? And children with and without behavioral challenges. So that's what led me down that road to write Undrink Your Junk Food, because I was like, well, let me look at the ingredients that are in the foods that we're putting in our bodies that could potentially have an impact on us in other ways. Mm-hmm. So when we wrote Undrink Your Junk Food, we realized that we call them the scary 7. There's now an 8th one, which I'll mention, which ties into your fats, is that there are a group or categories of ingredients that we know are not great for our body. And this is all according to the research. So it's in our book Undrink Your Junk Food. It was published in 2011. While it was published a long time ago, most of it still stays true, or all of it still stays true to today, even seeing new research that is coming up. So one of them would be like, let's say one of the ingredients that you want to be mindful of. So to answer your question, you're on the go, you want to run, you want to grab something, read the ingredients first, because many of us look at the calories. They look at the nutrition facts panel. Oh, does it have how many calories, or how much fat, or how much sodium, right? That's the typical way that we will look at a food label. And I always say that's so old style of reading, because that's not the way we should be reading a label. We need to be looking at the ingredients, and the ingredients will tell us the true story. Once we see that the true story is, okay, these are things that I want to put in my body, then we go and we look at the nutrition facts panel. So high fructose corn syrup would be an example of one of those ingredients. Now, high fructose corn syrup, if you're in Canada listening to this, it's known as glucose fructose. And we know that the research shows that it leads to obesity or insulin resistance, which is the stage before type 2 diabetes, right? Heart disease, fatty liver. All of these things, by the way, many of us are either experiencing or are prone to as we get into perimenopause and menopause. So I'm like, read the ingredients, avoid the high fructose corn syrup. Then there's the trans fats. So the trans fats, we know all experts agree that there is no safe level of trans fats. We know that it can lead to heart disease, diabetes, and diabetes, and cancer. So, make sure that it doesn't have hydrogenated fats on the label. Make sure it doesn't have something like datum. Like, there are certain ingredients that will be listed that you'll be like, okay, I don't want to put that into my body. Then there's also like food coloring, right? There's also artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners. Now, there was just a huge study this year in 2022 that linked it to heart disease, like artificial sweeteners to heart disease. So we know that it's a very controversial ingredient. There are a lot of studies showing that they're safe, a lot of studies showing that they're not. I've come from the camp of, well, if there are studies showing that it possibly isn't, then for me, then I just want to avoid it. So I say, listen to your body. If it creates, or you have a headache after having aspartame, or you have an upset stomach, or you don't feel so good, and there's, it's one of the most complained about food additives to the FDA. So listen to your body. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, well, maybe look at an alternative. And my whole thing is, there's so many great alternatives these days that if it is something that's upsetting you, doesn't do well for your body, then look at that alternative choice. So those are just some examples of ingredients that we all have. It's in the Undrunk Your Junk Food book, but it's also on my website, which is my other website called naturallysavvy.com. Or if you Google Scary 7, it'll come up. You'll see we have the list of all the ingredients and what they've been linked to. But what's interesting for me now is seeing how all of these ingredients and their side effects are now tying into menopause, which is what I'm working on right now, is undrunking your menopause, because now it's like, okay, MSG, which is another one, we know the side effects of MSG are hot flashes or heart palpitations. Doesn't that sound familiar in perimenopause and menopause? Those are symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. So just being mindful of what we're putting in our body. And that's always what I say. Just be mindful of what you're putting in your body. Think about, I'm eating this. How am I feeling within the next 24 hours? Sometimes we'll see right away how it affects us. Sometimes it might take 24 hours to maybe a headache will come on, right? So just being mindful and listening to your body is the key.
It's so interesting because I think this is the point, is we actually have to create some space for this. Like, we actually have to, create some time to actually just come into, like, how am I feeling?
Yes.
And that's a huge shift in and of itself, like, for us, like, to be honest, right? Like, I have 2 young children, like, I am giving her right now, and but because I'm in the space, I live in it, I'm early perimenopause, I'm like, I have to, otherwise I'm not in integrity with my whole profession. But that's one thing. But it's like, if we don't give ourselves space to actually chew and acknowledge, how does this make me feel? Then we're setting ourselves for a cascade of effects as well.
100%. And I know it's overwhelming, and I know, and listen, I've been doing this for a long time. So for me, I'm like, oh yeah, we need to do this. But I know for those of your listeners who are new to this, it's baby steps. We're not saying do it all at once. I'm not saying go and get rid of all of the ingredients that perhaps you've been having. I'd say one thing at a time. Start with one thing. Next time you're at the grocery store, look to see if it has any high fructose corn syrup, and then you can kind of go. And again, it's also going to depend on how you're feeling. So if you're getting, if you have heart palpitations, or you're having excessive sweating or migraines, you might want to start with something like MSG, right? And be like, oh, and there's 40 different names for MSG. So it just becomes this a little bit. So I've done a lot of the investigative work for you So you don't have to sit and do all that research. Literally, it's all on naturallysavvy.com, which is not my menopause website. It's actually my other website, but we've done all the research for you, and we will have an updated version for Undrunk Your Junk Food, Undrunk Your Menopause very soon. That's why I'm saying like I'm working on it so that I can even make it easier for you. So if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, which is wearemorphous.com, we email you once a week, and then we'll keep you in the loop as to what's going on. But yeah, one thing at a time, baby steps. Don't be overwhelmed by it. Don't say, oh my gosh, now I have to go and change everything I've been doing. No, if you do one thing and you feel not great after, take note and then say, okay, so next time I'm going to change this and I won't do that again. Right. So it's just, it's a work in progress. It's not perfection.
Okay, so we've talked about nourishment now. We've talked about how to, if we need to and want to, go and reach out for other products that are more packaged, how to kind of start to be more mindful and aware of what's in them. And now I want to talk about what if our body still needs some support. And where I want to go with this is you talked about in another interview, like you hadn't gone into the supplement space and you're there and you have, because you wanted, and I should just let you say to it, but what's really fascinating to me about what you're doing is like you've kept on mentioning it in this interview, like you love science, you want data, you want to go straight to the source.
Love it.
And if I hear one thing from females, it is like, what I know I need to, I want to take magnesium. Which one? I want to do this. Which one? I don't know where to go. Which one is the best? There's like 50 on the shelf. And how do I do this? So you're also supporting us all in that as well with coming up here with your line. Can you just talk a little bit about just in general, like how you're viewing it? How do we go through this and what you're finding with your people?
Oh, I love this topic. And yes, I do. I'm obsessed with research and data. But by the way, it's scientific data, but also anecdotal. I want to understand what people are feeling and what their experiences are. So I've never sold anything in my life in terms of products. I've never had, like, my partner and I have always been the company that's promoted everybody else's products. And then when we started doing this research, it became really overwhelming to me really quickly. I was like, oh my God, there are so many products on the market for women in menopause, and they all have all these different ingredients, but some of them have overlapping ingredients. But what does the research say? And I tried so many different things in the beginning, because for me, when I said I had that hot flash at 47, I'm talking, I had hot flashes for 2 years. I was so miserable. It was my absolute worst symptom. I was so debilitated that I looked at my husband one day and I said, if this is how I'm going to live the rest of my life, I can't. Like, I'm done. I can't do this. And I had tried so many different supplements. It would work for a little bit, then it would stop. And then I would have other issues, that it would cause, like, for example, I took one ingredient that ended up, causing an issue with my liver. And then I did the research. I'm like, oh my God, it is connected. Like, so then I made a promise to myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it into my own hands and I'm going to do my own research, and I'm going to look for ingredients that I know are for us in this phase of life. When I look at the research, and again, as much as I can, nothing's perfect, but I'm going to look at the research to see the majority of it. Does it have any type of consequence in another part of our body? And so that's what led me down this road of really understanding what to take. So I've come up with a foundation list of supplements that, and again, there's ingredients and then there's supplements, right? So I've come up with a foundation list of supplements that I believe that are ingredients that I believe every woman in this phase of life should take, because we need it according to what is shown as we go into this phase of life, that across the board, it can do really well for the majority of us. And like you're saying about magnesium, yeah, there are so many different types of magnesium. And you're like, wait, do I take threonate, malate, bisglycinate, bisglycinate? Do I take oxide? Like, what am I taking? Right? Because there's so many different types. So yes, I absolutely love it. And we when we launch our line, we won't have like 1,000 different products, but we will have products that are specifically for women. And we'll have a foundation line of supplements, which include a magnesium. I love magnesium bisglycinate, and I love magnesium threonate. Those are two that I have found that are great. You can also try a citrate, which is great for going to the bathroom, like if you have any constipation. So there are different magnesiums for different things, but I wanted something that helped women across the board. So those would be, for example, the magnesium bisglycinate, which is great for sleep too. That would be like a probiotic, which is amazing, a good multivitamin mineral, which is great. So enzymes, digestive enzymes, which again, if we're not digesting our food well, a fiber. So these are just some examples that so many of us can benefit from as we get into this phase of life.
Yeah. I love it that it's come up again, like a couple times of like where, and you're being so frank about it, that like you're a holistic nutritionist. You eat so well. And this is one of the things that I keep coming in and hearing from you. And it's not that you're not getting it right. It's like, people like, go on and love yourself, because, you know, here we have it and it's 24/7. Oh, well, maybe it's not 24/7, hopefully not your job 24/7, but you know, like you're living in it. You're living in this space and you're saying, okay, now I eat well, I'm living well, I'm trying to manage stress, I'm doing things right. And I know how to support my body, and I'm going to find other avenues to do that, because in our culture, in our food supply, we may not have it all, and we need to give our bodies a bit of a boost in X, Y, or Z. And I think it's just super important, because I hear a lot of, you know, there's like, you just need this, or you just need to do that, or, you know, it's still saying it's all on you, and we have to take responsibility for our health. But honestly, like, we can't do it all right. And we need to like keep on lifting ourselves up with doing things that we can do.
Absolutely. It's like I said, it's progress, not perfection. And I'm real. I'm going to tell you like it is. And by the way, I have my good days, I have my bad days, and things are I'm constantly learning.
Yeah.
Constantly learning. Like earlier this year, I found out that I had Hashimoto's, and that threw me for a major loop, which, you know, I had a setback on. So I'm always, everything that happens, I learn from, and then I like to share, which is why I've created this platform, because I'm constantly learning. I'm learning from my community, which is what I love. It becomes this synergistic relationship of, and I don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that, and I'll never say you have to do this or that. And anybody, if they're like, this is one thing, and that's the panacea, I'm like, that's a red flag for me, because it's never one thing. It's always a group of things. It's the nutrition. And I'm a nutritionist, and I know I can get pushback for this, but like I'm saying, I'm a nutritionist, but I still believe we need supplements. I hear a lot of people say we do everything you need through food. Well, I personally don't agree with that, because our food is so deficient in minerals. So you can have organic salads and your lean meats at every meal, or whatever it is, your good fats, but you still could lack some of the minerals because it's our food that doesn't have it. So I'm not saying out supplement your nutrition. Absolutely not. You can't out supplement nutrition. You supplement, meaning that you eat well, do what you can nutritionally, do your best. Then you could take your supplements. And by the way, it's important that we manage our lifestyle, right? Because if you're going to be super stressed and your cortisol is raising at all the times, it's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect so many different things in your body. So we have to look at our body. It's mind, body, spirit, right? It's mind, body, soul. It's everything together. It's not just one part of it. We're living, breathing human beings. So we're more complex than that, right? So that's really what my philosophy is.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's one other thing that you bring in to a lot of your thinking and thoughts and into the resources, and that is this thing called recovery, and the primary recovery is sleep. So do you want to just speak at all to that and help us understand just some of the things that you've learned through that, and what you would really want us to know and take away from?
So sleep in perimenopause and menopause is really, really complex. It's so many of us have issues in this phase of life, and and that can be one of the first ways that it starts to present itself, is that your sleep is off. You might have insomnia. Maybe you're waking up more during the night. Your heart might be racing during the night. You might be up you're looking at your clock, and every night it's 3:06, and you're like, oh, why every night at the same time between 2 and 4 a.m. am I waking up? So it generally starts to rear its not so lovely head at this time in our lives. And it is complex, and there's so many different parts of it. So sleep is important for sure, because it helps with repair, like you said. It helps to regenerate. It helps, deep sleep in particular is really important. So we want to look not only at the quantity of sleep, but also the quality of our sleep. And it becomes a little bit of, because we're more prone to anxiety and stress as we get into this phase of life. The thing about sleep is, if we're not sleeping, it can exacerbate it even more, but it can also be this vicious loop where we're like, oh my God, I'm getting anxious now because I'm not sleeping, and I'm not sleeping because I'm anxious, right? So it becomes this loop. So the most, like, if you can, there are different things that we could do, like sleep hygiene, there's sleep tips, there's a sleep routine, there's sleep supplements, there's different parts of sleep that we can look at. And I also, because I'm such an avid researcher, on my website, and I'll give you the link if you can even put it below the interview, is we did a sleep survey. So we did a signs and symptoms sleep survey and a sleep survey. And we're almost at 1,000 people that have responded in the last couple of weeks. We just put it up, and it's amazing. So I would love for your listeners, your viewers, to go and fill it out, because the more we understand from all of us going through this, the more that we can come up with ways to help you. So we have a sleep survey, and what we're finding out is that there are so many different reasons for waking up in the night in this phase of life, including going to the bathroom a lot, including the cortisol spiking at the wrong time, which is generally related to, stress and anxiety, including, having trouble falling asleep and waking up. So there's like lots of different reasons for it. So I would say, just, really quickly to go through it, we did give you a PDF where, your viewers can download it, which has a little bit more in there. But sleep hygiene is really, don't eat too close to bed, because our body is repairing overnight. But if you're eating very close to bed, and I mean like 3 hours, if you can wait at least 3 hours to 4 hours before you go to bed after you eat a large meal, that will help. So your body can repair as opposed to digest. And sometimes when you go to bed too closely after you've eaten that heavy meal, you still feel full the next morning. You're like, I just don't feel good. It feels like it's sitting in my belly, right?
Yeah.
Again, that ties into the fact that our digestive system isn't working as efficiently as it did prior to this stage. So you may want to look at eating at least 3 to 4 hours before. Then you may want to avoid alcohol before bed, because alcohol, while it's a sedative, it may help you fall asleep. You're going to wake up when it processes and metabolizes in your body. So that's a reason why it might disturb your sleep. So if you're going to drink, earlier in the day, not so close, not that nightcap, if you're having sleep issues. Again, you may not want to drink too close to bed if you're waking up several times a night to go to the bathroom. You want to make sure your room is cool, 65, 68 degrees. You want to make sure your room is dark. There's research now showing that ambient light from outside, even. So a lot of us have like LED lights now outside, or you have a street light outside you. So if you could use either blackout blinds, which is not affordable for everybody, or you can put on a sleep mask, which can work really well. You want to block out that light, because research shows that it can affect our blood sugar levels, right? So it can affect other things as well. So these are just some sleep hygiene tips. Make sure you're washing your sheets, make sure your bed is comfortable. A lot of us have pain at night, which is keeping us awake. That's a really big one as well. So when it comes to sleep hygiene, those are some examples. Having a sleep routine, maybe, a half an hour before you go to bed, or an hour, just winding down, avoiding the blue light exposure, which wakes us up, maybe taking a bath with Epsom salts that help you to absorb that's magnesium sulfate, absorb some of that magnesium, throw a little lavender in there. Breathe, right? Just like maybe doing a meditation or Googling YouTube, like sound baths are amazing. It works with frequency, vibration, and sound, which is awesome. So anything that's just going to help you relax before you go to sleep can really make a difference.
Oh goodness, that's so helpful. And this is all in a lot of information of this is in the free gift that you have given us. So thank you so much for that. One point that I just want to kind of hone in on, just because this is for athletes and we are movers, and trying to there's some of us feel like we need to eat right like before bed for recovery, or because we are waking up so hungry, and that we're finding that there's a bit of a glucose drop. Is that just do you know about any of the research there, and be like, well, that's an individual thing, or maybe you didn't have enough earlier on in the day, or do you have any insight into that, or do we not have? We would need more information from the individual.
So I'm not an expert on athletes in terms of their requirements for food and when to eat it. But I was just reading recently, actually, it's interesting. So a couple of different thoughts on that. And of course, I'd want your viewers to go and do their own research and listen to their body. But there's one school of thought where there's intermittent fasting. And I don't know, again, if that's, something that a lot of athletes will practice or not, but there's the intermittent fasting where you go a certain amount of time fasting and then a certain amount of time eating. So you could try that. Now, if you're doing intermittent fasting, then obviously you're not going to eat prior to bed. And I interviewed Dr. Jason Fung. He literally is we say the grandfather of intermittent fasting in the last 10 years or so. So it'd be good. He would be a great resource to check out if that's something that your viewers want to look into in terms of how it can affect them in terms of even their performance. Then there's the other school of thought that I was just reading about recently that was saying that you want to eat something before bed because that can help with your blood sugar. So, it's one of those things that, again, I always say, listen to your body and see what works for you. If you're getting that good night's sleep, if you're having, again, I wouldn't eat too much before bed, just because then especially if it's a huge carb meal, then that can obviously affect your blood sugar in not such a great way and affect your sleep. But if you're going to have, let's say, a mini snack and you want to reach for your proteins, you want to reach for something that's going to, a handful of the nuts. So something that's going to help manage that blood sugar while you sleep, and that's not going to really impair your digestion too much, then I say, listen to your body and do what works for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Because I guess we do get so much conflicting information. So I love it that you gave both of the sides. And for female athletes, intermittent fasting is, that word is just, we created just don't go there, but there is thought to, let's think about how we're timing our eating and make sure that it's always nourishing. It's in a nourishment state. And because we constantly are moving and burning, and there's a problem more with low energy availability than there is with overeating in our population. It's rampant.
100%. And the thing about intermittent fasting, by the way, some people absolutely love it. And some people are like, absolutely not. And if you have any type of autoimmune issue, you shouldn't be intermittent fasting. So it's one of those things, again, I will never say you have to do that or you have to do that. I'd say, well, here's what, is recommended. This shows that certain women do really well on this in perimenopause and menopause. Again, not providing that, if you're an athlete, you don't need, you can't do that. Everybody's different. You have to do what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you really wanted to make sure that our listeners heard that we haven't brought up yet today before we get to rapid fire?
I would think just lastly, there's some amazing research by this doctor, a medical doctor. Her name is Kate Shanahan, and she wrote a book called Deep Nutrition. So you're obviously, you're speaking to athletes, and many of your viewers now or who are watching this are athletes. If you're experiencing any type of pain, let's say, and you're noticing that you're trying to eat as best as you can, but you still have pain in your body, I would highly recommend, I did a great podcast with her. It's on my Menopause Reimagine podcast. And she talks about something called seed oils. Now, seed oils would be canola oil, soy oil, sunflower, safflower, corn, grapeseed. They're a group of oils that create oxidative stress in the body, which lead to inflammation. So if you find that you're doing what you can, but you're still like, something's not working, I would highly recommend looking into her research. If you just Google seed oils, her name will come up, and then you could see what she says about it. So try eliminating that from your diet and seeing if your pain improves. The reason I'm saying that is because I did that and it made a huge difference in my body. And then if I have by accident, let's say if I'm ordering out and it comes with, they made the meal with canola oil, let's say, I could feel it the next day. I get these pins and needles in the bottom of my feet, the pads in my feet. Right away, I could tell if I've had seed oil. So again, a little tip, it might affect you, it might not, but her research is incredible, and that is her life's work. So I would highly recommend checking that out if you have pain in your body.
Yeah, or bloating. And for me, I am so upset because I can't go out and have fries anywhere. I just cannot do it. Or store-bought anything like muffins or anything like that. So coming back, I'm so glad that you brought it up, because we absolutely wanted to go there, and I didn't prompt you with that, is those oils that we have in any of those store-bought muffins, and they're pervasive as well, of trying to find, and it is actually quite difficult. And this is where the hummus came in, what kind of oil is in the hummus. So if you're finding I'm burping a lot, that's what happens with me, is I just get this, or I feel sluggish. So it's also like your body's always telling you the story. And that is, I did read that Dr. Kate Shanahan number of years ago. And her story is phenomenal in how she came to understand and heal herself through and this really critical thing. And so it's another thing that we can just start to investigate, and just another avenue of, like, yeah, be curious. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
all right.
She's awesome.
It is awesome. Okay. Are you ready for my rapid fire questions?
Go for it.
All right. What is one thing that you're learning right now or you're working on that you are super excited about?
Oh my gosh, menopause.
Okay.
Everything to do with perimenopause and menopause. Like that is my raison d'etre. I get up in the morning, I'm like, okay, what am I going to learn today? So I would say that. And I would also say TikTok. I love TikTok and I love my community there. So I would say that I'm super grateful for them because I'm learning a ton there too.
Yeah. So get on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. I have to admit, I'm not a TikToker, but I can only do so many things, but I would love to get to know your community. So then maybe I'll get on TikTok and start, like, I just think it's more jazzy and more like groovy, right? Is that?
I like it. I enjoy it. Yeah. Check out my page. It's at Andrea Donsky. So you could check out what I'm doing. I have educational videos. I have support videos. I have laughing, like funny videos. I make fun of myself a lot there. You know what? I just have fun. At the end of the day, it's having fun, and which I'm grateful for as well.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next question is, what are you grateful for?
Oh, I'm grateful for that. But I'm grateful for my health. I would have to say after this year, when I had this, I had to deal with Hashimoto's, and it put me out for about 2 months, and it was really interesting. So I would say my health, I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. And how it has spurred so much energy, and like how it came from difficulty, but you're just on fire once again.
Well, I worked really hard at overcoming it and understanding what was happening. And then, so I could help other people and having the right support network. I would say I'm very grateful to have a support network like my TikTok community, having a support network of friends and colleagues who are able to, help me through it. So, and that's an important thing I would recommend to everyone too, is find a great support network, whether it's online, whether it's a friend, whether it's anybody that can, when you feel, and it doesn't mean necessarily somebody who can help you from the health aspect, but just to support you, to validate you. That is so huge and crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And our final question is, what is one principle that you live by? I mean, there might be many, but what is one that you have?
Oh, there's many. I would say the one that comes to mind would be taking responsibility for my actions. I would think that in terms of, and this is something I talk to my kids a lot about, whether it's through my business or whether it's through life. I mean, again, none of us are perfect, but understanding that it's our responsibility to also take responsibility for certain things, and understanding that it starts with us. I would think that would be something that I try to live by as much as I can.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to leave you the last word with you, of course. And I just appreciate the, just how you are being in this world, and what your stance is, and what your support is, and what your service is. And so thank you for creating time for this summit, because I know I know you're busy. So thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, everybody's busy, right? But at the same time, like, we're all doing our thing. We're all doing our best that we can do. And, but I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you having this discussion. And I love talking about nutrition and menopause and everything that we supplement and everything that we talked about. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.